your transmission shifts hard. It hesitates, clunks or slips a little between gears. A shop hears that and starts talking rebuilds, $3,000 and up. But when the only real problem is old, broken down fluid, a fix that costs as little as $7 in fresh fluid can smooth out shifting noticeably. Most people do it wrong and make things worse, and I'll show you how to do it right. Stick around, because I'm covering several cheap transmission fixes, not just one. Let me be straight, because that's the whole point here. Fresh fluid is not a cure for everything. It can work real magic when your shifting problems come from old, burnt, degraded fluid that's lost its properties. It cannot fix worn-out clutch packs, a bad solenoid, or mechanical damage inside the transmission. If your fluid is the problem, this is one of the best value fixes in your whole car. If the guts are worn out, no bottle saves it. I'll show you how to tell which is which. Here's the plan. First, the main fix, a proper fluid change done the right way. Second, what the fluid's condition tells you about your transmission's health. Third, 2 related cheap fixes people overlook. And stick around for the mistake that turns a cheap fluid change into an expensive disaster. Let's talk about the main problem. Your automatic transmission runs on transmission fluid. And that fluid does a lot of jobs at once. It's a hydraulic fluid that actuates the gear changes, it lubricates, it cools, and it carries the friction properties that let the clutches grab smoothly. Over tens of thousands of miles, that fluid breaks down. Heat cooks it, it gets contaminated with tiny clutch material and metal particles, and it loses the additives that make shifts crisp. When the fluid degrades, shifting suffers. You might feel harsh or delayed shifts, a clunk going into gear, slipping where the engine revs, but the car doesn't accelerate like it should, or shifts that come at the wrong time. Fresh fluid with the right properties can restore smooth, properly timed shifts if degraded fluid was the cause. Here's where the money comes in. When you brings those symptoms to a shop, the conversation can jump fast to a rebuild or replacement, and that's $3,000 to $5,000 or more, depending on the vehicle. Sometimes that's truly necessary, but sometimes the transmission just needed a fluid service that costs a fraction of that. A dealer fluid service might run $150 to $300, and doing it yourself can be as little as the price of fluid plus a filter. The gap between a fluid change and a rebuild is enormous, which is exactly why it's worth ruling out the cheap cause first before anyone touches your wallet for thousands. Now the main fix, step by step. First, the single most important rule. Use the exact fluid your transmission specifies. This is not optional. Transmissions are designed for a specific fluid type, and the wrong one can cause harsh shifting or damage. Check your owner's manual or the dealer for the correct spec. Transmission fluid runs roughly $7 to $15 a quart, depending on type, and you'll need several quarts. Get the right fluid even if it costs more. Tools and supplies, the correct fluid, a new transmission filter and pan gasket if your transmission has a serviceable filter, a drain pan, a socket set, a torque wrench, jack and jack stands and gloves. Some transmissions have a drain plug, many require dropping the pan. Safety first. Never work under a car on a jack alone. Use jack stands on level ground. Let the engine and transmission cool if it's been running hot. Transmission fluid can be scalding. Wear gloves and eye protection. Now, there are 2 approaches, and you need to understand the difference. A drain and fill removes and replaces only the fluid that drains out, often about a third to half of the total, because a lot stays up in the torque converter. A full flush uses a machine to exchange nearly all the fluid. For a high-mileage transmission that hasn't been serviced in a long time, many experienced techs prefer a simple drain and fill, or even a few drain and fills over time, rather than an aggressive flush. We'll come back to why in the myth section it matters. Here's a basic drain and fill. Step 1. Warm the transmission slightly by driving a few minutes, then park on level jack stands. Step 2. Place your drain pan and either remove the drain plug or carefully loosen the transmission pan bolts, starting at one corner so the fluid drains in a controlled way. Expect a mess, fluid will come. Step 3. If you drop the pan, clean it out. Note any debris, replace the filter and gasket, and reinstall the pan, torquing the bolts to spec in a crisscross pattern. Don't over-tighten. You can warp the pan or strip threads. Step 4. Refill with the exact specified fluid through the fill point. This is critical. The correct fill level matters enormously. Many modern transmissions have a specific procedure, often checking the level at a certain fluid temperature with the engine running and going through the gears. Follow your vehicle's exact procedure because overfilling or underfilling both cause problems. Step 5. With the car safely back on the ground and running, shift through all the gears with your foot on the brake, then check and adjust the fluid level per your car's method. Step 6. Take a gentle test drive and feel for improvement, then recheck the level. Some cars have no dipstick at all and require a scan tool or a precise temperature-based check, if that's yours. This may be a job better suited to someone with the right equipment, and that's okay. So what should you realistically expect? I'll undersell it on purpose. If your rough or delayed shifting came from old, degraded fluid, fresh, correct fluid can noticeably smooth things out, sometimes right away, sometimes over the next few drives as the transmission adapts. On a neglected transmission, a series of drain and fills over a few thousand miles can keep improving things gradually. That's a real, satisfying win for very little money. But I'm going to be honest, fluid can't reverse mechanical wear. If your clutches are worn or a component is failing, fresh fluid might improve things slightly and briefly, or do nothing. It is not a rebuild in a bottle. The value here is twofold. You might fix a fluid-caused problem cheaply. And either way, the fluid's condition gives you crucial information about what's really going on inside. And reading that fluid is exactly the next step, the one that saved me from authorizing a rebuild I didn't need. Related fix number 1, reading your fluid and checking the level. Before you spend anything, your fluid tells a story. Pull the dipstick if your car has one, or inspect what drains out. Healthy automatic transmission fluid is usually red or pinkish and fairly clear. If it's dark brown or black and smells burnt, that's degraded fluid and a sign the transmission has been running hot or is overdue. Fresh fluid may well help. If you see metal shavings or lots of grit, that's a warning of internal wear, and that's important to know before spending on anything. And here's a free one people miss. Low fluid level alone causes slipping and rough shifts. A transmission low on fluid can act like it's failing when it just needs topping up, often because of a leak. Check the level using your car's exact procedure. If it's low, look for leaks, a transmission pan gasket, cooler lines, or seals. Topping up to the correct level with the right fluid can restore normal shifting instantly if low fluid was the issue. Fixing a small leak is far cheaper than a rebuild. This single check, fluid color, smell, level, and any debris, is the most valuable 2 minutes you can spend before letting anyone quote you thousands. Related fix number 2, motor and transmission mounts, and the cheap stuff that mimics transmission trouble. Sometimes what feels like a transmission problem isn't the transmission at all. A worn engine or transmission mount lets the drivetrain shift around, and you feel a clunk when you put it in gear or accelerate. Easy to blame on the transmission. Mounts vary in price, but are often far cheaper than transmission work, and replacing one is a manageable job on many cars. Another mimic, low or dirty fluid in a manual transmission. Manuals use gear oil or sometimes ATF depending on the car, and old fluid can make shifting notchy and stiff. A fluid change on a manual is often straightforward and cheap. Drain the old, fill with the correct spec, and shifting can smooth right out. And don't overlook simple things on cars with a clutch, like a failing clutch hydraulic or linkage adjustment, which can feel like transmission trouble but be much cheaper to address. The theme across all of these, lots of expensive sounding symptoms have cheap, specific causes. Diagnosing the real source before assuming the worst is how you avoid paying rebuild, money for a mount or a fluid top-up. Now let's bust the viral fake versions, because some can cost you a transmission. Myth number 1, the big one this video is named for, that a single bottle of additive makes any transmission shift like new. No additive rebuilds worn clutches or fixes a bad solenoid. Some additives can condition seals or slightly modify friction and occasionally reduce a minor symptom, but they are not a fix for mechanical failure. Treat them as, at most, a minor helper, never a cure. Myth number 2, and this one's important, that you should always do a high-pressure flush on a high-mileage transmission that's never been serviced. There's a real concern here. On a very neglected transmission, an aggressive flush can dislodge built-up debris and, in some cases, lead to problems shortly after. Many experienced techs prefer gentle drain and fills on high-mileage units. I'm not saying flushes are always bad. On a maintained transmission, a proper exchange is fine, but blindly flushing a neglected one is a real risk. Know the difference. Myth number 3, that any transmission fluid will do in a pinch. Wrong. Using the incorrect fluid type can cause harsh shifting and damage. The specified fluid exists for a reason. Don't substitute to save a few dollars. And myth number 4, that adding fluid past the full line gives smoother shifts. Overfilling causes foaming and can damage the transmission. The correct level, not more, is what you want. Let's cover the common mistakes that cost money or wreck transmissions. Mistake 1, using the wrong fluid. I'll keep repeating it, exact spec only. Mistake 2, getting the fluid level wrong. Both overfilling and underfilling cause real problems. Follow your car's exact level procedure. Mistake 3, aggressively flushing a long neglected high mileage transmission without understanding the risk. Mistake 4, ignoring the warning signs in the fluid, metal shavings, and a burnt smell mean you should investigate, not just refill and hope. Mistake 5, assuming every shifting problem is the transmission and skipping the cheap mimics like low fluid, a leak, or a bad mount. And mistake 6, over-tightening pan bolts and warping the pan, causing leaks, torque to spec. Rushing any of these can turn a cheap service into an expensive repair. Here's the honest caveat. A fluid service is perfect when degraded or low fluid is the cause, and it's smart maintenance regardless. But some symptoms mean stop and see a pro. If you have heavy slipping where the engine revs but the car barely moves. If you saw lots of metal debris in the fluid. If the transmission is making grinding or whining noises. If it won't go into gear or is stuck. Or if a warning light and limp mode have kicked in. Those point to internal or electronic problems that a fluid change won't fix. A modern transmission often needs a scan tool to diagnose solenoid and sensor faults. Spending on fluid to rule out the cheap cause is smart. Ignoring real internal failure just makes the eventual repair worse. Let's recap. When old or low fluid is the culprit, fresh correct fluid, sometimes just 7 to a few quarts worth, can noticeably smooth shifting and save you from a $3,000 rebuild you might not need. The fluid's color, smell, level, and any debris tell you what's really happening inside. And cheap mimics like a low level, a small leak, or a worn mount can fake transmission trouble for far less money. If this saved you money, hit like and subscribe, because the next video is one a lot of you asked for. How to read your transmission fluid like a mechanic, color, smell, and the dipstick test that tells you in 2 minutes whether you need a fluid change or a rebuild. I'll see you there. Khatran.